The financial services industry is growing. We're not just growing in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but we're growing nationwide. From San Diego to Denver, Virginia to Florida, we are growing. But we're not just growing with anyone. We're growing with amazing people. People like teachers, first responders, construction workers, veterans, single moms, and even couples. People who believe in creating and building generational wealth and leaving a legacy. We are also working with people that are looking to work with a company who believes in them. We're looking for part-time people or full-time people, whether you just need a little bit of extra income or you're looking for a full career transition. My question for you then is, are you who we're looking for? Let us know.
The U.S. government has given billions of dollars to businesses in an effort to curb the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The government will begin to pursue recouping these funds in 2021. Aggressive penalties will be imposed on companies that do not follow regulations and guidelines for proper use of these funds. Criminal charges are already being levied on fraudulent use. Don't suffer again. Get a customized business operations success suite from Elite 8 Tax and Financial Services for your company today. BOSS packages include entity formation, payroll, accounting and bookkeeping, tax planning, tax filings, and quarterly strategy sessions to minimize your tax liability, increase efficiency, and maximize your profits. Make your appointment today at elite8financial.com. Get the guidance, tools, and protection your business needs now. Get BOSS. Get behind the shield.
Welcome to another episode of Boss Talk Radio. I'm your host, George Dandridge Jr., EA. I'm blown away at the anticipation of this episode, the number of people that's been sending me messages. I hope that our guest is ready for it because, man, they hit me with the hot track today. So right from the door, I want to acknowledge that this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Tune in to people around you, pay attention for signs, because it's not always easy to tell people what you're going through. It's also Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and in spirit of such, our guest today is none other than Dr. Tiffany Woodus OB-GYN, and we're going to talk some more about her later. If you're tuning in for the first time, Boss Talk Radio is an acronym for Business Operations Success Suite. This is where we bring the best and brightest from across all kinds of industries to give you practice tips, tell the stories of what entrepreneurship is really like, and help you grow your business. Welcome to Boss Talk Radio.
Welcome to Boss Talk Radio, the #1 online business and entrepreneurial talk show. Brought to you by Elite 8 Tax and Financial Services. Here's your host, the Texas tax expert, George Dandridge.
And we are back. So my software has some new buttons and toys to it, so I kind of ran out of time today playing with some stuff. And we're going to do something a little different for the first time today. So what that is we're going to allow you guys to be a part of the show. So I'm going to post this link here. And so when we bring our guest on, once we talk to her a bit and let her dig in your mind and everything, we're going to give you guys the opportunity to ask her some questions live. So go ahead and save this link that I just posted on the screen so you'll be able to engage and ask Dr. Woodus questions. And when you come in, you'll see a little private chat box. Go ahead and put your question there just in case I don't get to bring you live online. You still have an opportunity to get your question asked. So again, take advantage of the link right down there below. That's how you'll join the show today to get into engage with Dr. Woodus, and we'll be right back after we pay some bills.
We could not continue to do our filing of our taxes in the traditional sense that we've been doing for so many years. So we opted to go ahead and take the advice from one of our friends that went ahead and referred us. And since he referred us, we said, we decided let's go ahead and check Elite 8 out, and we're glad we did. They were extremely very thorough, so that's part of the excitement that we really enjoyed with Elite 8. So some of the parts of the values that we really enjoyed was that they were, beyond the fact that they were trustworthy, very thorough, extremely responsive, and the fact that we could do things online just the same that we were able to do in the traditional sense.
Get behind the shield.
Hey, this is going over kind of nice with the with some of the new toys, but some things didn't get uploaded and I have to go back and forth to the screen. But I thank you guys for tuning in. I don't know if it was the description or whatever it was that had so many people ready to engage Dr. Woodus today. So again, we're going to be bringing her on a little bit later. Right now, we want to touch on some of the things that's been going on in the media. Last week, we talked to you about some tax planning, and who knew that, the very next day, we were going to have this bombshell drop dealing with 45's the president's taxes and his tax returns or whatever. So there was a lot of ambiguity on that. There were a lot of questions. And there was a lot of misinformation. So we felt it necessary to, in this segment's term of the week, enlighten you on a couple of things. And this is this segment's term. Welcome. This is your boss term of the week. Welcome to Boss Talk Radio. This is your host, George Dandridge Jr, EA. This week, we're gonna, it's funny because last week we talked about planning, and right after that, we had the big break with the president stuff and everything. And a lot of folks were upset about what he paid and so forth and so on. And a lot of people in my industry took heat based on us talking about the part where he did planning or whatever. And this is not to debate whether or not what he did was legitimate or illegitimate or whatever, but we found that there's some ambiguity about certain things or whatever. So throughout the next couple of weeks, we're going to use different tax terms as the term of the week. So this week, and I accidentally put it on the screen already, but it's write-off. So definition. A write-off is a deduction of the recognized value of something. In accounting, this is a recognition of the reduced or zero value of an asset. In income tax statements, this is a reduction of taxable income as a recognition of certain expenses required to produce the income. The term write-off may also be used loosely to explain something that reduces taxable income. As such, deductions, credits, and expenses overall may be referred to as write-offs. Businesses and individuals have the opportunity to claim certain deductions that reduce their taxable income. The Internal Revenue Service allows individuals to claim a standard deduction on their income tax returns, but people can also itemize deductions if they exceed the standard deduction level. So deductions reduce the adjusted gross income applied to a corresponding tax rate. Tax credits may also be referred to as a type of a write-off. Tax credits are applied to taxes owed, lowering the overall tax bill directly. Now, corporations and small businesses have a broad range of expenses that comprehensively reduce profits required to be taxed. An expense write-off will usually increase expenses on an income statement, which leads to a lower profit and lower taxable income. This has been your host, George Dandridge. Stay tuned next week for your next boss turn. And we're back. So hope you were able to take something from that. If you have some questions, a very valuable tool that we have, if you go to elite8financial.com, we have a page called Tax Tools and Tips. And we even have a section there where you can find a lot of the common overlooked deductions for businesses. And so, matter of fact, we'll get into some of that
This
right
is
now.
Dr. Tamia Guest with Rejuvenating Chiropractic.
This is Nara Reed with Modified Nutrition Health Coach.
This is Karen Marcel with June Street Barbershop.
This is Tiffany Marcel with Marcel Luxury Realty, and you're listening to Boss Talk Radio.
Welcome to this week's Boss Tax Tips. So last week we were talking about tax planning, and as you know, over the weekend there was the blow up about the president's tax situation and everything. And one of the questions that came up, I think it was related to his haircut situation, and we're not going to say whether or not that's legit or not, but the question got to, well, when is something legitimate deduction and whatnot? So we talked about deductions in the term of the week, but on the tax tip, what we want to add to that for you guys is a deeper understanding about a business expense. So this part is about being ordinary and necessary. So it's section 162 of the Internal Revenue Code, affectionately known as the IRC, that discusses guidelines for business expenses. The IRC allows businesses to report any expense that may be ordinary and necessary. To be deductible, a business expense must be both ordinary and necessary. So let's talk about what that is. An ordinary expense is one that is common and accepted in your trade or business. A necessary expense is one that is helpful and appropriate for your trade or business. So the thing is, though, an expense does not have to be, say, indispensable to be considered necessary. Generally, ordinary means that the expense is common in the industry, and most business owners in the same line of business or trade would potentially expense these things. Necessary means that the expense helps in doing business and it's appropriate in that business, and a business owner might not be able to handle the business if he or she did not make that expenditure. So an expense that meets the definition of ordinary and necessary for business purposes is expensable and therefore tax deductible. Now, keep in mind, some business expenses may be fully deductible while others are partially deductible. This goes back to that part about planning. This is why you want to talk to your tax professionals prior to just running out. I was like, oh, I could write this off or whatever, and it's deductible. So on our page, we actually have on the tax tools and tips section, if you go to our website, put it on the screen there for you. It's elite8financial.com, and it's the segment Overlook Deductions, elite8financial.com/overlook deductions. You can find virtually any industry on here, and it's some very common overlooked deductions that you may want to review your tax return, see if you captured those things, plan to track those things in the coming year or whatever, so you can maximize all of your legal tax deductions. This has been your Boss Tax Tip. We'll see you guys next week. So I have a challenge for everybody right now. So first of all, if you're tuned in, I hope that you're getting your questions together for Dr. Woodus. She'll be joining us in just a moment. But I have a challenge going out to all of the fathers out here who have daughters. Oftentimes when we have shows that is regarding health, we find that the men aren't tuned in, especially if it's about women's health. But find that there's a disconnect when it comes to fathers and daughters in that regard or whatever. And if you're a single father, God forbid. So issuing that challenge to all the ladies that are watching right now, have your significant others or daughters' fathers tune into the show and get their questions ready for Dr. Woodus. And before we bring her on, we're going to go into some of the other segments that have become so popular with you guys. I think some of y'all just kind of petty, but what we have is really tough times mentally for people right now, just dealing with certain things. So we want to keep everybody inspired and encouraged, especially if you're in business. So this segment is for everybody that may be going through a little bit of something right now. This is our boss motivation piece. Where are you going? It's astonishing how many people don't know the answer to that question. They don't need a map or an example because any road will take them where they're going because they don't know. Some people think they know until you hit them with, why are you going there? This is when that reality sets in that they're going somewhere they didn't choose by the suggestion, direction, or impression of someone else. You're on autopilot in the driver's seat. Someone else is driving your car, your destination. The problem with that is, how will you know when they've arrived? What does it feel like? What did they accomplish along the way? In the course of my work in vetting people for Boss Talk Radio, I come across what I deem to be many successful individuals. And let me say that again. For reasons I deem they're successful individuals. The reason I repeated that is because someone else may feel like they're not, successful people or whatever. So that brings us to the question, have you defined success for yourself? You're here, so we'll assume you have. Now, how did you get there? How did you get to that point of defining success? And will you drive success in your life, or will you sit on autopilot and allow the outcome to be determined by the environmental circumstances surrounding you? When you hear follow the road less traveled, it doesn't say follow the road never traveled. Instead of, trying to reinvent the wheel, improve on it. Now, I'm not saying don't burn, whatever inside of you, that gift. If you have the creative wherewithal and the resources to do so, if you have that life-altering invention or software, etc., by all means, pursue it. But look at the route before you do, so you can minimize the mistakes, and the loss of time, and protect your peace along the way. I mean, almost anything you can think of has been done before. Not necessarily great or successful, but almost anything you can think of has been done before at some levels. There's levels to this. So research those routes. Find the one that gets you to where you want to be. Not the fastest, but the most complete. See, some of y'all like to take shortcuts, and then when you get there, people happy to see you because they know what it took to get there. So they want to share some camaraderie with you, but you can't talk about none of the journey, that they're speaking of because you took a shortcut. Now, when it's the time to apply all the stuff you learned along the way, you don't know it. Your GPS was different. Instead of a guaranteed planned success, Yours stands for got past shortcuts. Success leaves trails and the roads are already paved. Just follow them. We talk about following every channel of social media, but what are you following? No, it won't make success easy, but it'll make it easier. So turn on the GPS. Guarantee your planned success. What does the GPS need? Let's talk about what the GPS is gonna need. Right from the door, it's gonna require you have to charge it. It needs power. The GPS can't give you any feedback if it doesn't have any power. You have to have the right input. First lesson in any computer course is bad input, bad output. So if you put in negativity and doubt and unnecessary obstacles, it'll give you all kind of directions. You'll be like that line in the J. Cole song where they say, "Congratulations, you've come a long way. Bad news is you went the wrong way." So, how many of you, let's take a look at this. How many of you live somewhere and there's a toll road there or toll roads? And a lot of you, what y'all do is y'all override the GPS to make sure you don't go down the toll road. Y'all go feel this. A lot of you override the GPS because you don't want to pay and sometimes it makes sense, but because that 2 or 3 minutes you save isn't worth the $2 or $3 that you're going to spend in the process. And that's different. I get that. But some of y'all just have that thing permanently set. You'll allow 40 minutes to an hour to be added to your trip each way to save $5 or $10. What that got to do with success, George? You won't pay the people that could save you time and help you get where you're going because you're too damn cheap. Your GPS is guaranteed premeditated struggling. I heard somebody once say they paid a guy his hourly rate, not for his services, right? They paid his hourly rate to have a conversation with him. I was like, wow. And it was a conversation about, well, how did you get there? What they should expect, what they would have done different if given the chance. So invest in your GPS, charge it up, determine your path, and drive your success. Stay motivated. So we're back in this thing, and I hope that touched somebody, and I hope that you take direction and drive the course of your life. That's what it's all about. And really, 2020, I hope definitely gave you that clear vision to be able to do that. And in doing so, hey, let's just be honest. We have a lot of challenges right now, and everybody's challenge isn't the same. So if not so much the disease itself hasn't impacted you, if the conditions have impacted you, that's where the levels are really, really different. Some of you are working from home for the first time. Some of you aren't working at all. Some of you are finding out what it is to be a second, third grade teacher or what have you. I bet y'all have a new appreciation for teachers, right? So whatever it is, though, whatever that challenge is, you're going to be presented with two things that you absolutely have to manage. And those are time and choices. And we're going to give you that heat right now. For rich or poor, educated, dumb or blind, everyone is obedient to Father Time. Even Mother Nature, before making a choice, gets her signals from the Father Time's voice. So if Mother Nature gives Father Time his respect, who the hell are you not to come correct? You can miss this message and keep on snoozing, but time gonna do what it do, and that's keep on moving. Now that's G. Let's go. So in this segment of Fire, we're talking about time, but more importantly, we're talking about choices. The discussion of time doesn't get as uncomfortable until you realize you're just about out of it. The discussion of choices, though, yeah, that get real uncomfortable real quick. That's largely because we've grown accepting of time excuses, which is kind of crazy because when you think about it, for all the technology we've designed to save time, we're really not accomplishing anything more as a whole than we did before we had it, or without it. Why? Choices. It's one of my favorite songs by E40. Y'all check that one out, Choices. But the reason the conversation about choices is always uncomfortable is because we have to be held accountable to it. Listen, there's always a choice. May not always be good ones. May not always be righteous, but there's always a choice. The weapons shall form. It's your choice if they prosper. Now let's take a look at, the weapons, and they say, well, you ain't supposed to get political or religious on your show, but I'm gonna do what I do. Let's take a look at the weapons. It's funny how the history of America has sickened itself that she can't keep it down, just regurgitating its vile nature under new packaging, but now it's sick with a cancer it can't deny. I say let it die for new life, but y'all ain't ready for that conversation. 244 years ago, a hypocrite wrote, all men are created equal. Y'all don't hear me. I didn't say they live equal, treated equal, or will have equal justice, but created equal. What makes this statement true is that the richest man on earth and the poorest man on earth has 24 hours in a day. Choices is what separates them. Even after you hair splitters finish discussing wealth gap, systemics, inheritance, slavery, and everything else, there's still 24 hours in a day. And you're free to use yours to complain. You're free to use it to learn what you don't know. You're free to blame others about the results of your choices. Or you can choose to accept responsibility, learn from your past like America never has, and create the freedom to control your time. We're living in unusual times, except for I feel like we've been here before, just at a new level. In time, you'll see that whatever your greatest fears are right now, you'll survive it. But what if I tell you right now, while you're living in fear and the devil in your ear, somebody, somewhere is moving like time. And when this time passes, you'll wonder how they arrive where they are. Keep it hot, y'all. Okay, so you know what time it is. Go ahead and get your pen and your pad, and we'll get ready to take notes and everything. And so we're going to try something different. Like I said at the top of the hour, we're going to try something different for the first time. So one, bear with me on this, because this is George playing around with buttons and stuff, and y'all know I do tax, not tech. So what we're going to try to do here is I'm going to share the link to the show, to the studio rather, on screen, and you can go into here and ask our guest, Dr. Woodus, some questions. I'm going to go through a bunch of the ones you guys have been sending me ever since I posted she was going to be on. I was like, man, she's like a celebrity on this thing or whatever. So, want to give you a little bit of background on not just Dr. Woodus, but our engagement, because going back to the acronym, Business Operations Success Suite, she did something that I truly, truly, truly admire. So it was about 12 months ago, around December, early January, I get a call from Dr. Woodus, and she wants to come in for a consult because she's going to open her own practice. Well, what's really, really awesome is that on today, at the top of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, she has brought that to reality. She did all the proper steps. She talked to the accountants. She talked to the lawyers. She's got the infrastructure set up. And then she even made the investment into her YouTube channel and everything. And it's like really hot. I don't know if y'all following. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and put the YouTube channel up there. You guys go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, because unlike me, who's kind of lazy and pressed to create a show once a week, she drops stuff like daily wisdom on that thing. Like I wake up in the middle of the night and she's got a new video on there. Like, wow, okay, So I was surprised. Like, I'm learning a lot in following her. Just about some of the things that you ladies have to deal with in your health. And she doesn't always just talk about your body. She talks about, the mental health. She gives you resources. She shares other people's platform on her channel. So we're very, very, very happy to have her in the studio today. And I even had to get her video on. So we're going to bring her on like this. Welcome to the show, Dr. Tiffany Woodus. Dr. Woodus, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you. There's a lot of anticipation of you. A lot of people have a lot of questions. And there's some, I'm going to ask some of the ones that came up multiple times or whatever. But before we get into that, go ahead and tell everybody a bit about yourself. I didn't feel like I could do your bio justice, because I was even more impressed after that. I was like, wow, does she have time in her schedule?
That's funny. I come from simple beginnings. I'm a small town girl from Arkansas. I grew up as a preacher's kid. I grew up in the church, and that was my background. That was really kind of what gave me the drive and the impetus to follow my dreams and to keep going. My family and my tribe was instrumental in supporting me and allowing me to live my dreams. I went through all my school in Arkansas and then came here for training in my specialty, which is obstetrics and gynecology. Met my husband during that time, finished my training at UT Southwestern Parkland Health and Hospital System in 2010 and stayed on as faculty there for about 10 years. And then as my family started growing, I had a toddler and then had recently had twins. I just needed to take a breath. I needed to regroup. I needed to find balance. And so I stepped away from my clinical position in that setting and became a hospitalist, which is someone who just does medicine as it pertains to the hospital, so no clinic time. I started that in 2019, and I'm currently still doing that. And, my intention in stepping away was to regroup and take a breath. But God was kind of like, you've always wanted to start this private practice. Now is the time to do that. Now you have the space in the room to wrap your mind around that. So it's time to get after it. So here we are. We are opening our practice this fall in Cedar Hill. We anticipate we'll start seeing patients at the end of October, end of this month, beginning of November. And we're excited to serve our community.
Hanging out with you and being of service at the grand opening, because I know you're going to be inundated with new patients, because I'm following your program, your show, and it's like you've been featured in a lot of articles and other interviews lately. And I'm like, wow, she's doing all of this and she hasn't even gotten to open yet. She's going to need a couple of assistants real quick. So first and foremost, let me put this out there. If you are in the DFW area, Dr. Tiffany Woodus will be opening her practice, Woodus OBGYN, and that is, I get these two mixed up all the time. Is that Duncanville or DeSoto?
It's in Cedar Hill.
Cedar Hill, okay. So kind of right in between the two.
Yes.
So if you guys are seeking a new OBGYN or seeking a greater level of care, I think you'll find that Dr. Woodus' tenderness and level of understanding comes across in her daily communications and whatnot. So we have a lot of questions that's coming up. First, let me put this link back up again for anybody that wants to ask you any questions on air. And then I'm going to take a quick commercial break. And we're going to come back and get into some of these questions that we have. Be right back.
Finding your brand space in this ever-changing economy can be challenging to new and established businesses. Graphic Line Media can help launch your business's brand potential to unknown places with creative revisioning that relentlessly presses the competition. From graphic design, web, print, apparel, media, and social, we have something designed to grow your business. Don't hesitate. Rule your space. Visit Graphic Line Media at graphiclinemedia.com or join our Facebook page at Graphic Line Media to get special discounts and offers.
Are you a business owner struggling with wearing every hat from custodian to comptroller? Do you know all the local, state, and federal tax reports you have to file and when? Is your business positioned to leverage credit? You're best at what you do when you're doing what you were designed to do. At Elite 8 Tax and Financial Services, we're designed to support your business from conception to succession. Let us optimize your business for the best tax advantages, payroll, accounting, and even virtual CFO services. Our Business Operations Success Suite is tailored to your business to meet you where you are and help you grow by freeing you of the tedious back-office requirements. See how we can customize a plan for you at www.elite8financial.com or call us at 469-412-0056. Get balls. Get behind the shield.
So we're back in the building and we have Dr. Tiffany Woodus with us. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, I don't even know how to put these in order, and there's some stuff I'm not going to ask just because I don't even quite understand what they're saying. I don't look too crazy. But one of the questions that I have, I think that'll help us jump into this, is what is it that you'd want to communicate to women about their care?
That's a good question. One of the main reasons that I jumped into this specialty is because I was absolutely appalled at some of the disparities that women are facing in the healthcare arena, and specifically when it comes to Black maternal health care. If you've been following, it's been all over the news. We are disproportionately affected by so many things. But specifically as it pertains to my specialty, Black maternal mortality rates are just astronomical. The United States is leading the world with maternal mortality rates of, we have higher rates than any other developed nation. And so that was one of the main driving forces that drove me to get into practice, because I felt that there was a gap and there was a need to do a better job to educate, elevate, and empower our community to help take control of their health narrative and improve some of these outcomes. So my goal, my mission is to do just that, to have a platform that reaches far beyond the clinic in Cedar Hill, which is why we've paid attention to have such a huge marketing push that reaches beyond the clinic and can reach the masses when it comes to giving women the space and the tools to empower them to take back control of their health narrative.
Awesome. One very, very common question, like of all of the submissions, this one came up the most. I didn't even know it was that serious. So it came in different forms, though. So I'm just gonna put the topic out there because I don't know how to ask the actual question. But basically, why are fibroids such a common issue in African American women?
That's a good question. We actually don't know. We don't have a good answer. It's an area where a lot of research needs to be done. We know that there can be some environmental factors. We know that sometimes there are dietary factors. For example, certain vitamin deficiencies can increase our risk for fibroids. We know that there is not necessarily a genetic component, but fibroids do tend to run in families. So if you had a mother or older sisters that had fibroids, you're more likely to experience that as well. We know that there can be some environmental influences, such as certain exposures to certain toxins or other chemicals, either natural or synthetic, in our environment, which Black women may be or disproportionately exposed to, that might increase our risk for fibroids. We know there's been some research that shows that a deficiency in vitamin D, which Black women are more prone to face, because we get vitamin D not only from our diet, but also through our gut by absorbing sunlight. And because we have more melanin, we do that process less efficiently. So that might play a role to increase our risk for fibroids. And then there have been some other studies that looked at things like using relaxers and the chemicals that might be in those products that might also increase our risk for fibroids. So I said all that to say that it is an area that is vast and wide open in terms of the need for more research so that we can get a better understanding of why this disproportionately affects us.
So in that, I heard a lot of different possibilities, and it developed this question in my mind, which was, are there any pre-screening type things that could be done to prevent it, and or any, I don't want to say early detection, but maybe early lifestyle communications that could reduce the chances, or is this just a hit or miss type of, thing?
That's a good question. In general, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, so paying attention to diet and exercise and making those things a priority, decreasing inflammation. There have been some studies that show that women who have elevated markers of inflammation may be at increased risk for fibroids. And so managing stress may be another area that could be preventative for some women. There's this theory that Black women and Black people in general are subject to this condition that we call weathering, which has to do with managing chronic stress as it relates to living, functioning at a high level in a system inundated with systemic racism. And that not only does that impart mental stress, but also physical stress, which may be something that accounts for why we're disproportionately affected by certain conditions. So managing stress, decreasing inflammation, paying attention to diet and exercise are some things that we know can potentially help improve our outcomes and decrease our risk for these things.
I'm going to try to communicate these two questions here. So I don't know. I think this might be a little too specific, but the first one was, are there any effective non-surgical treatments for ovarian cysts?
Effective non-surgical treatments. Well, we do know that in terms of preventing ovarian cysts, sometimes when you suppress the function of the ovaries, for example, with hormonal medicine, it could be something as simple as birth control. Sometimes that can decrease or prevent the formation of new ovarian cysts. So that is something that is a possibility, yes.
Interesting. Okay, and I'm probably going to say this one wrong, so you have to interpret this question. It says, what's the normal success rate of uterine ablation, and do you personally recommend the procedure to your patients? For those of us that have no idea what that means, first of all, what is that?
Yeah.
And is it something you recommend?
So there are several different types of ablation procedures. There is a procedure that destroys the inside lining of the uterus. So that's referring to the endometrium. Endo is inside, metrium refers to the uterus. So there are ablation procedures where you apply a form of energy. So that could be in the form of radio frequency for certain types of the ablation procedures that target that inside lining, which where it comes into play with fibroids is that it's that layer of the uterus that causes the heavy bleeding that can sometimes be associated with fibroids. So by ablating or destroying that layer, you decrease the amount of blood loss a woman can have potentially related to fibroids. There are other types of ablation procedures where you target the fibroid themselves and not the tissue layer that they act on. So with those types of ablation procedures, you actually use energy, you apply that radio frequency energy to almost nuke, shrink, or destroy the fibroid so that it becomes inactive and shrinks and regresses so much that it becomes asymptomatic for a woman. So you can use it to treat the symptoms you can see with fibroids, whether it be bulk symptoms like a feeling of pressure or heaviness in the pelvis, pain, pelvic pain, abdominal pain, back pain, pain with intercourse, heavy bleeding, all of those things you can sometimes use to treat, or you could use ablation to treat those symptoms. Now, how effective they are depends on where the fibroids are located and whether or not the correct patient was selected for the procedure. So there are several factors that you need to consider when you think about how effective it is. If you choose a procedure in the wrong patient, then it's not going to be very effective. So you really have to look at a patient's physical exam, their findings on ultrasound, and what their goals are for the procedure before you can really gauge how effective it would be for that person.
So clearly, that's not a cookie cutter approach.
No.
That really requires some one-on-one. And I don't have that question pulled up, but it leads right into two questions I remember seeing, which was one: do you find that women are substituting OBGYNs for primary care doctors?
You know, I wouldn't say necessarily substituting. I don't feel like we're in conflict. I think that we're definitely better together. I mean, I definitely defer to them for certain conditions. I do, though, have a fair number of patients who I'm the only doctor that they see. And so if they're pretty vanilla in terms of their health history and they don't have any long-standing chronic complicated medical issues that fall outside of the realm of obstetrics and gynecology, then I'm perfectly happy seeing them as their primary care provider. And some insurance companies do consider obstetrics and gynecology to be primary care. But if you have complicated medical conditions or an extensive past medical history, you would be best served by having a team of providers, like-minded folks who can get together and make sure that you are getting the best care that you deserve.
And that's a great segue. Thank you for that. That is a great segue into the other part of that question. And if I'm getting it right, basically they're asking when considering care and working cohesively as a team, is it necessary or do you recommend that Black women, African-American women specifically, seek out people that treat them based on separate standards? Not, I guess what they're asking is basically textbook down the wire, which written. And I saw the intro to your show and I was like, yeah, I think she does some specialty stuff here.
Yeah. One of the messages that I really want to get out is that one of the things that we can do to take back control of our health narrative is to be choosy about our providers. We need to understand, and this is not just my opinion, studies have shown us time and time again that Black people do better in terms of having better health outcomes when they are cared for by Black providers, when they are cared for by Black providers and providers who are culturally competent. So I think it is imperative that we seek out qualified, high-level providers that look like us in order to really meet our needs, in order to improve communication, so that we can effectively be cared for in the manner that we deserve to be. So I really think that it goes a long way, and it's something that we need to pay attention to. We also need to know that we have to actively participate in our healthcare. We have to educate ourselves so that we're not subject to just what someone chooses to tell us about our health condition. We have to come to the table with that baseline knowledge so that we can really get on the same page and make a plan to optimize your personal care and well-being. We have to know that it's our right to ask questions. It's our right to seek a second opinion if we need to. Second and third opinions save lives for sure. And we have to not be afraid to switch providers. If we feel like our needs are not being met, if we feel like our concerns are not being heard or not being addressed appropriately, we can't be afraid to make those steps, because sometimes our well-being can depend on it.
And I think it's fair to add that in addition to what Dr. Woodus just stated, that doesn't just qualify by being a Black doctor in itself, because I think there are some Black physicians that are just textbook. And I think it's the exceptional doctors, regardless of race or background, that, for lack of better words, disregard insurance rules and things of that nature and say, hey, I'm going to take care of my patient, and my patient is an individual, not a number or whatever the case may be, and they look specifically to you. What do you think is probably the biggest hindrance to people not participating in their care or just accepting what they're told when they go in and see a general physician or what have you?
I think that people are just maybe unaware that this is a relationship, and it requires the participation of both parts to really optimize the situation. When you come in to see me, I am using 15, maybe 20 minutes of time and interaction with you to gather, information about your health history, to gather my thoughts about what may be going on, to make the best informed decision that I can. And the only way to do that effectively is if you actively participate. I think, though, that, as Black people coming into these spaces, we have kind of traditionally been in a role of feeling subordinate, feeling like we don't have a voice, feeling like it was an authoritarian type situation where we were just there to submit to whatever we were being told. And we've got to get out of the mindset of that. We've got to actively participate and engage, and realize that that's the only way we're going to help improve outcomes, is that if we are vocal, if we express our needs, and do so in a manner that's effective, so that we can really actively participate and improve our outcomes.
So here's a question I think a lot of people have, because it was asked in 100 different ways, and I finally got down to what they were getting to. So in today's age, we find that Black women are the fastest growing in the sector of being educated, and the fastest growing sector of new business owners. With that said, fewer women are as anxious to become mothers and whatnot, or engage in that total family life. And the question has been asked, well, how do they preserve fertility until they're ready to make that commitment, and whether or not they pose a greater risk if they're waiting to their mid 30s and later to engage in having children?
That's a great question. You really need to go and see your OB-GYN and have a discussion about your family planning. And I think taking that first step will really help you understand what you may be up against and what some of the risks are associated with waiting. We know that as we get older, women come here with all the eggs we're ever going to have. We never make any new eggs, and even before we're born, our eggs start to die. So the longer our eggs have been around, it increases the likelihood that there could be an issue with those eggs. They may not be as healthy as what they were when we were younger. And so that increases our risk for things like miscarriage. It increases our risk for things like genetic issues like Down syndrome and some of the other issues that you can see when a woman is older and starting her family. So you need to have a discussion, a family planning discussion about this type of issue with your physician. And then your physician can take the time to explain to you that as we get past the age of 35, we really definitely start to see some of these issues rise. So have that discussion, come up with a plan. I work in close relationship with some of our reproductive endocrinologists and infertility specialists, which is a specialty within obstetrics and gynecology, to help direct and guide a woman with more information about things like egg preservation, so that you can delay, put off family planning and still have that as an option in the future. So that could definitely be a very viable option, and it's not as out of reach as some people think, but it starts with that conversation. It starts by expressing that concern so that you can prepare and be ready for that.
Okay, awesome. Now, I don't know if I can combine these questions or not, but in reading through them, it looks like I'm being asked to ask you about regular screenings once you turn 40. Which types should there be? If you're at a greater risk of death for childbirth once you turn 40, I'm starting to think everybody listening is 40 years old. And is it normal to crave sex during menopause?
Okay. So screenings at the age of 40 in terms of general health screenings. So you definitely should be plugged in and established with a primary care physician, whether it's family medicine or internal medicine. And you definitely should be plugged into an obstetrician gynecologist. And then if you have any other medical issues, you may need additional attention, but those two things I would consider basic. With the OB-GYN, it would include your general well woman exam every year, which is a head to toe exam. You definitely want to have a clinical breast exam, which is an exam that your physician or healthcare provider would perform. We also recommend that mammograms start at age 40. There's been lots of controversy recently that lots of people have seen in regards to what is the age that a mammogram should start and how often should it be done. So you can have a conversation with your physician to kind of arrive at that, but the general recommendation is that mammograms start at age 40, and then they can be done every 1 to 2 years depending on your exam findings and your risk profile. We would also recommend a pelvic exam. And I think a lot of women are confused about the role of the pelvic exam. They confuse it with the pap smear. So to break it down, the pap smear is primarily for cervical cancer screening. Additionally, you can pick up other things on the pap smear like certain infections. The pelvic exam examines everything else in the pelvis, and that includes the vagina, the uterus, tubes, ovaries. We recommend the pelvic exam to be a standard part of the well woman exam, and it should be done every year, unless there are extenuating circumstances not to do so. The pelvic exam can be your tool that will help give an assessment about things like fibroids and whether or not that's something you should be concerned about. We talked about that earlier. We just passed Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. The pelvic exam can evaluate the ovaries to see if that might be a concern as well. Your well woman exam may also include some routine blood work. And so this would include basic things like a CBC, which looks at general health and well-being, markers of infection, screens for anemia, and it looks at your platelets, which is a component of the blood. It can look at your comprehensive metabolic panel, which will give us general information about your health and well-being, so nutrient status, your blood sugar, to screen for diabetes, and it would look at liver and kidney function as well. And you might think about thyroid screening. So most practitioners would recommend just general thyroid screening, either symptom-based or kind of as a rule of thumb, starting at the age of 40. And then vitamin D deficiency screening. So I would say those would be from my OB-GYN standpoint, the basics in terms of screening for health and well-being. Now, obviously, if you have symptoms, something that is concerning on exam, that might dictate that other things need to be done. But for an average risk woman with, I would say average health, those would be some of the general things. And then the second part of your question, I believe, was why can women crave sex during menopause? Is that correct?
Uh-oh, can you hear me? Let's see what happened with the sound here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I didn't know if you could hear me.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
I'm just getting clarification. The second part of the question is why can women crave sex during menopause?
Let me go back to that one. It was, is it normal?
Is it normal? I love when people ask me if something is normal.
Which is good because there's a lot of is this normal questions coming.
Yes. And so, it is not abnormal for sure. That transition into menopause is a time when hormone levels are fluctuating significantly. And so you can have situations where that can be very normal, depending on how you respond to the fluctuations in your hormone levels. So it is not abnormal by any state.
Your standpoint on midwifery / doulas in the African American community, do you feel as a race we should lean towards the natural route or the normal route that society has conditioned us to?
I love midwives and doulas. I mean, I think that they're magic.
Now, for us guys out here, let's explain a little bit of that.
Yeah. Okay. So a midwife is a birth worker who takes care of low-risk pregnancies or uncomplicated pregnancies, and that can be in a variety of settings. It could be someone who performs those services in a home-based setting, in a birth center, or in a hospital. A doula is a support person, so it's a non-medical person who is there to serve as a patient advocate and provide support throughout the pregnancy, the labor and delivery process, and in the postpartum phase. The question I think comes up because these providers are seen to be in conflict in a lot of cases when you compare their services to what we traditionally think of an OB-GYN providing. And I think that's one of the things that we need to change in terms of our mindset. And we need to realize that we are all better together and we all serve a purpose in helping our community by working together. And OB-GYN a lot of times will take care of those patients who have complications and who are high risk for having complications during their pregnancy, during the labor and delivery process, and in the postpartum phase. And so I am all on board with incorporating more services from midwives and doulas in our community. The evidence is irrefutable in terms of how those services can be beneficial. We know that patients who are taken care of by doulas are significantly less likely to experience birth complications, pregnancy complications. We know that they are significantly less likely to have interventions like C-sections and other procedures during their pregnancy. And so I love incorporating doulas into the care of my patients as well as midwives when it's appropriate. And so I have absolutely no issues with that. In terms of natural versus otherwise, natural means so many different things to so many different people. It really requires a conversation to understand what that means and what it looks like. And I think that you need to choose a provider who is willing to consider or at least have a discussion what your desires are for your labor and delivery experience, and then go from there.
You missed all of that, huh? Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay,
I'm not sure why there's a delay.
I didn't realize I wasn't back on the screen whenever
Okay.
I was just talking.
Okay.
So, a few people touched on the subject of bacteria, vaginosis, and yeast infections. So the question that I'll take the deeper of the questions, which I don't know how they're related, but that's why I do what I do. The question is, what is your stance with African American women as it relates to V-steaming or using boric acid as a natural route in place of prescription drugs for those conditions?
Well, I don't necessarily recommend vaginal steaming. And the reason is because I have not seen any evidence to prove that it is beneficial. I have seen evidence and have seen cases where it has been associated with increased risk. So I have not in the past recommended vaginal steaming for those reasons. I have used boric acid, for the treatment of chronic refractory cases of vaginal infections. And so I definitely do not have any problems with that. I have had to get it from compounding pharmacies in the past, but there is definitely good scientific evidence that indicates that it can be helpful for women who have tried other interventions and treatments, whether it be lifestyle changes, dietary changes, or traditional medications, antifungal or antibiotic medications to treat those vaginal infections and haven't been successful. I personally have been successful incorporating boric acid into my practice and have no issues with that.
And that's under that same topic. The question came up of causes. What are some of the things that people that experience? I don't think they're trying to insinuate chronic, but I guess what they may feel more than normal. What are some of the causes for bacterial vaginosis and/or yeast infections?
Those infections come about because of an imbalance of the bacteria and yeast in the vagina. And so there is a certain level of yeast and bacteria in the vagina that should be there. When we do things that throw off the balance, we see an overgrowth of what we would call the bad bacteria or the yeast that then causes infections, itching, irritation, discomfort, bleeding that can be associated with those infections. Some of the things I see more commonly happen can be for women who douche or use other feminine hygiene products. We have to understand that the vagina is a self-cleaning organ. We do a lot of things to the vagina that throw off the balance that can be unnecessary and can increase our risk for infection. So using soaps, body washes, detergents that have a lot of fragrance and dye in them can definitely increase your risk and predispose you to infection. And then by the same token, douching and sometimes even practices like vaginal steaming and that type of thing can also increase your risk for infection. Wearing underwear that doesn't have a cotton crotch, silk satin underwear that doesn't allow the area to breathe can definitely increase your risk for infection. Sometimes there are certain hormonal changes that we go through, like the hormone changes you can experience with pregnancy, that can sometimes predispose you or increase your risk for infection. So there can be a lot of factors at play, but it definitely, at its baseline, has to do with an imbalance of the bacteria in the yeast in the vagina.
That was a lot of information. Y'all gonna have to cash out Dr. Woodus on this because I was like, we're doing consults up in here. And are some of these like really the common questions that you get in office?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, all the time.
Okay, so somebody wants to know about recommendations for feminine products, or are there? Wait, let me say this right. So, are there certain feminine products you find cause more complications with African American women?
I would say not necessarily with African American women, but with women in general. Those that have more fragrance and more dye in them, I definitely see cause more of a problem. So I would say tend to the ones that, or make sure that you are paying attention to the ones that have more natural components to them and that aren't necessarily supplemented with scents and that type of thing. Those I definitely see cause a problem across the board, not specific to African American women.
Okay, now we have a question here that I'm not going to ask it the way it was sent. I'm going to get controversial with this thing. But we're going to pay a quick bill and we're going to come right back.
Have you ever wanted to get into the tax industry but didn't know where to begin? Or maybe just wished you could turn your social media likes into hard cash? Now you can! Elite 8 Tax Pro Solutions has everything you need to start or grow your own tax business. We even have a referral program for those just looking to earn extra cash without having to learn the ins and outs of taxes. For as little as $99, you can unlock unlimited earning potential in the tax industry with the tools, support, and training of an industry leader. Visit ElitePTS.com today for more information.
Hey, we're back and we have Dr. Woodus on the line. And you know that it wouldn't be George if I didn't touch on something that was a little bit controversial. Welcome back, Dr. Tiffany. If you can't tell, I love your intro.
Well, thank you so much. I worked hard on that. I'm pretty proud of it. Thank you.
I absolutely love it. The little jazz beat going on. So we have a question about contraceptives. Your recommendation to such or whatever, but I couldn't leave that just like that. That's too easy. I've been told or accused in multiple settings of being a conspiracy theorist or whatever. So we're going to take George out of the equation and lean to your medical expertise on this. Many years ago, I was introduced to this concept where women were able to put this thing in their arm or what have you, and then be able to control birth control, whatever, I think for like 3 or 5 years. And I was like, yeah, I don't think you should do that because you don't know what this thing gonna do to you while it's inside of you or whatever. When it comes to these different types of contraceptives, are you like okay based on the research and things you've seen, or is there a moment of pause about the big pharma companies that create these things?
So I think it's an important question. I think you definitely have to look at the intent behind some of the products that we use and where they're coming from. But from an OB perspective, I am for giving a woman the tools that she needs to empower and take control of her life. Before we had access to contraception, one of the major things that held us back was not having control over our reproductive health. When contraceptives became mainstream, it definitely gave us some freedoms in allowing us to think through family planning and make birth choices such that we could prioritize things like our careers and things like where we kind of saw our futures, and it gave us more options. It gave us more options for pursuing educational opportunities and other professional careers. And so I definitely have individualized, personalized conversations with people and just try to get an idea of what their goals are. And I try to figure out how I can support their goals. And if that involves family planning and that's the right decision for them and they don't have any medical contraindications or other reasons not to pursue that, then I think it's reasonable to consider some of the birth control options that we have. Now, I also want us to realize that birth control is not just for the prevention of pregnancy. And when we start making opinions and judgments about whether or not a person should be on birth control, we need to zip it, because we don't realize that their physician and that individual may be using birth control for more than just the prevention of pregnancy. I have some women who are on birth control because, when they're not, they bleed so much that they're anemic and at risk for blood transfusion. So we are controlling symptoms like those that can be associated with fibroids or polyps or other abnormalities with the uterus that puts their health and well-being at risk when they are not on birth control. I have some women who would medically be at risk for becoming very ill or even losing their life should they become pregnant. So for them, birth control is a necessary thing just to be here. I have some women who are on birth control for a variety of reasons. I have some women who have conditions like PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and by the way, September is also polycystic ovarian syndrome awareness month. But for women who don't have regular cycles and should be, that can be a dangerous condition, because when you are not menopausal and you're not having periods on a regular basis like you should be, you're significantly increasing your risk for uterine cancer. And so I have those ladies on birth control to prevent them from developing uterine cancer. So there are a variety of reasons to be on birth control. It's personalized and individualized to each and every person, and it's a decision that they need to sit down with their doctor to make on that basis.
So just make sure I'm clear. You see, I changed the background. I had to put it in the hot seat. But just so I'm clear, so there's no adverse opinion to specifically the one that you're implanting your arm?
No.
Okay. Now, as a guy, because that one was the one that they told me was a conspiracy theory, but there's another one I have an issue with. And y'all don't mistake this as George said he has an issue with birth control. That is not what I'm saying at all. But there's another type of birth control that I'm pretty sure was made by Satan, because it's this insert in this wire, and for us guys, like, yeah, no, that's the devil. Don't ever prescribe that to anybody. It's just evil.
You're gonna be mad when I tell you that's one of my favorite types.
No, that is the devil. Oh my goodness. But yeah, no. So why is that? Why is that? Hey, because if it doesn't work by way of doing whatever it's supposed to do chemically, it definitely works by making you stay back.
So you're talking about Mirena. You're talking about the IUDs, I think. So an IUD is an intrauterine device, and it's a T-shaped device.
It is. I understand it's the devil.
I wouldn't quite call it that, but I will tell you why women like it. Okay. So you literally put it in, your doctor literally puts it in, and you can forget about it. And depending on which one you choose, it's good for anywhere from 3 to 10 years. And it works just as good as permanent contraception. So it's just as good as getting your tubes tied in terms of how effective it is at preventing pregnancy. So women like the ease of convenience of this birth control. They like that you can put it in and forget about it. I don't have to remember to take a pill every day. I don't have to change a patch out every week. I don't have to come and get a shot every 3 months. It's no maintenance, and it's foolproof, which improves how effective it is because it's not dependent on whether or not I remember to do something or whether or not I do it the right way. Now, the symptoms that you're talking about, I will tell you, I could count on one hand the number of partners that have come to me and said that they wanted it out because they complained about it being painful during intercourse. I can usually tell what the issue is. Sometimes it has to do, I'd say a lot of the times it has to do with it not being in the right place or the strings being too long or too short. And that's why the partner is irritated by it during intercourse. But that is highly unusual. And I've been doing this for 14 years.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So we'll get into this next one here. I don't know if this is outside of your wheelhouse or not, but they want to talk about preventative measures for diabetes and breast cancer as it relates to African American women. I'm sorry, under the age of 45.
Okay, so let's break it down. Preventative measures for diabetes.
I have add on to that. Like, so are the different ages like that big of a deal on that thing? Like 40 to 45 or 35 to, like, is it that weighted?
In regards to breast cancer, they may be talking about the age difference because younger Black women disproportionately are at increased risk for being diagnosed with breast cancer than white women of the same age group. So I think that might be why they're making a distinction. That could be it. So in terms of preventative measures of decreasing your risk for diabetes, a lot of this has to do with lifestyle. So we know that having a sedentary lifestyle or one that doesn't prioritize routine physical activity significantly increases your risk for diabetes. And on the same token, it significantly increases your risk for breast cancer since it was brought up in the same question. And when I say significant, I mean like 30% increased risk of breast cancer for women who are sedentary or don't exercise. So the recommendations are that you should get at least 30 minutes of aerobic exercise. So exercise to get your heart rate up most days out of the week, at least 5 days for at least 30 minutes. So exercise is one of the most significant things. And then paying attention to a well-balanced diet, a diet that is more heavy on fruits and vegetables than it is red meat, processed foods, saturated fat. So that can go in both categories in terms of decreasing your diabetes risk and decreasing your breast cancer risk as well. Other preventative things for breast cancer itself, you need to know your family history. About 10% of breast cancers are attributed to a hereditary source, and if you have a strong history of cancer, sometimes there are genetic tests that you can undergo to have a better understanding of your risk. And then once you understand that risk profile, your physician can really come up with a strategy for surveillance and prevention. There are some medications and other interventions that you can consider should you fall in a high-risk category for breast cancer. We also know that when we were talking about family planning earlier, we also know that women who started their childbearing or started having babies younger than the age of 30 are at decreased risk for breast cancer. Women who breastfeed for at least 6 months decrease their risk for breast cancer. So these are some of the risk factors that we can control and that are modifiable that will help decrease your risk for breast cancer. We talked about obesity. We know that alcohol intake, so excessive alcohol intake, increases your risk for breast cancer. It's hard to know what a safe amount of intake is, but in general, most people say to limit it to 1 drink a day. Some interesting research has come out that indicates that women who work night shifts are at increased risk for breast cancer. We need to look more into figuring out why that is, but they think it has something to do with melatonin. So those are some things that we can kind of definitely take into our wheelhouse and modify to help decrease our risk.
So final question of the day, and then we're going to get into how people can follow you and reach out to you.
Okay.
Final question for today. Well, the last one from that was sent in. So final question for today is, have you seen any evidence of direct correlation between exposure to sunlight or lack of exposure to sunlight and decreased sexual desire?
Let's see. If I think about it, sometimes lack of exposure or decreased exposure to sunlight can affect your mood and could potentially predispose you to operating in potentially a more depressed state. And sometimes for women at least, our sex drive is very much between our ears. So it could be that those environmental influences then kind of get interpreted as a lack of
just run past that like you didn't say it. Did you just say, hey, did y'all get that one more time for the people in the back? Did you just say a lot of times that women's sex drives are between their ears? You have to expound on that one. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So for us, it is not just physical, right? It definitely has a lot to do with what's going on with us internally. It has to do with our state of mind. It has to do with being preoccupied with, your body habitus, your emotional state, stressors, whether it's work-related stress, parental stress, lack of communication with your spouse. It has a lot to do with that. And then, we go through certain stages in our life where, we are pivoting as we, kind of transition into motherhood and get used to that role, or transition into menopause and get used to that role. Hormonal fluctuations play a role there as well. I just did an extensive study and talk about, what happens after we have children and how the change in hormones after we become a mother and have children, or are breastfeeding and going through those changes, can decrease your libido. So there are definite medical explanations for a lot of these things, but it is so complex and so multifactorial that you have to really peel back the layers of the onion and figure it out. And what has been a common denominator is a lot of times it has to do with your emotional, social state that has the greatest influence on lack of sex drive and libido.
Very, very interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and put the YouTube back up there, but what are some other ways that people can follow you and or reach out to you if they wanted to schedule a consultation?
Well, please come see me in my clinic. That's the first thing. Please come see me in my clinic. Like I said, we open at the end of this month, beginning of November. You can visit my website at woodusobgyn.com right now to request an appointment. And then as we get closer to opening, an office associate will reach out to you to get some additional information and confirm your appointment details. I'm all over social media, like Mr. Dandridge said. You can find me at Doc Woodus, DOCWOODUS, on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, if that's your thing, on Pinterest. And so I'm all over that. And my website is a great resource, woodusobgyn.com.
And did I put that on the screen right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. It's been a pleasure and an education having you on. I really appreciate the time you've given us in the audience today, and being so detailed and compassionate in the answers you offered. Is there anything you wanted to leave the guests with?
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm passionate about eliminating women's health disparities and improving Black maternal health outcomes. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please join me in this journey. We've got a lot of work to do, but I don't want that to discourage us. We have what it takes to make a difference. It just takes one step at a time, and I'm here for it. And I appreciate you allowing me to come onto your show, use this platform to get the message out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Tiffany Woodus, ladies and gentlemen. You have been tuned into Boss Talk Radio. It's been a joy having you guys here, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Until then.